God of War, an undeniably legendary game series, one of my all-time favorites actually. The franchise, created by the incredibly talented folks at Santa Monica Studios, has as of this year been going strong for 2 whole decades. From the grandiose pathos of the Greek saga to the introspective character study that are the Norse games, Kratos' journey as a character has been beautifully unfolding throughout my lifetime, easily becoming one of the greatest and certainly one of the most successful examples of a long-running character-driven narrative in all of modern fiction. But first, let's take a look at where it all began, back in 2005 with the release of the first installment in the series.
Previously on Azrael Entertainment, our procrastinating protagonist had embarked on a seemingly joyous journey of reviewing the Crash Bandicoot series of video games and thwarting villainous comical caricatures on the way. However, when the initial 4 games cemented themselves as timeless classics, Crash Bash's sheer stupendous skullduggery and bullshit were enough to turn our reckless reviewer into a depressed alcoholic. Also, we are terribly sorry for not uploading in a very long time. Yet again, the reviewer spent an ungodly amount of time being hospitalized this year. Yeah, we are very sorry.
Man, it sucks that Crash Bandicoot will no longer be developed by Naughty Dog. What will happen to the franchise, I wonder?
I believe I can help with that.
Wait. Who are you?
I am the Universal Studios, of course, and no doubt the pleasure is all yours.
Universal? Okay, but what do you want from me?
I am so glad you asked. You see, I'm currently lacking time management enforcers that would motivate my development studios to be on track. And you seem just the guy for such an assignment. Oh, and since I'm the publisher for that Great Fox, whatever it's called, game series, in return, I will also make sure that their franchise prevails.
So, if I help you, you'll be able to prolong the existence of my favorite Orange Bandicoot.
Of course.
Sick. Will you be paying me minimum wage?
Okay.
Oh, fuck yeah, let's do this.
Straight off the bat, God of War 1 throws the player right into the thick of it, fending off entire waves of the undead aboard a ship sailing through the Aegean Sea. A very intense opening level. The combat engine, by the way, I must say is rather intuitive, and while the subsequent games would go on to improve upon it, this game is no slouch in that regard. There is a sufficient variety of attack combinations and special moves to keep the act of slaying your foes consistently fun and engaging throughout the entire game. I must also commend the perfect block parry mechanic, and while I personally always struggle with an exact timing for such mechanics in video games period, which is only made more challenging by the input delay while recording my game footage through OBS, God of War 1 actually offers a really good window of time for the parry. It honestly feels perfect. It's not too frustratingly quick, but also not too long, like something akin to the Deadpool game's teleport dodge, where it feels like the game is giving the player way too much leeway. And this mechanic would go on to be further fleshed out in the following games. Also, throughout the span of the introductory level, we face off several times against multiple heads of the ferocious Hydra, ending in a monumental confrontation where Kratos slays the beast. Not to mention, I simply can't not praise how the encounter pays homage to the original myth, while taking quite a unique spin on it. You see, in the original story, in order to prevent the heads from growing back and multiplying, Heracles, whom we'll compare Kratos to several times throughout the video, and his nephew, who was actually assisting him in this labor, had to cauterize each of the Hydra's neck stumps, while Kratos can stop the 2 minor heads from regenerating by impaling and immobilizing them. And in the myth, the Hydra possessed 1 primary head, just like its game counterpart. with the drastic distinction being that Heracles had to bury the remaining head under a boulder because it was immortal, while Santa Monica have chosen to make Hydra mortal so that the fight would feel a lot more satisfying for the player. And so defeating the primary head while the minor ones are restrained causes the creature to actually die. And just like that, defeating giant monsters as well as introductory levels featuring boss fights against larger-than-life opponents would become some of the franchise's most well-known and regarded staples, appearing in every single following game. However, another staple, or technically a running gag, that doesn't quite appear every game, at least I don't think there was any allusion to him in the spin-offs or 2018 if my memory serves me right, that gag being, of course, the unlucky boat captain, whom Kratos kills for essentially shits and giggles. All that aside, we soon learn that Kratos' journey across the Aegean Sea and Poseidon's command to slay the Hydra was actually nothing new to our ashen protagonist. For 10 years up to that point, he had actually served the Olympian gods, pretty much being their errand boy, a hound they'd sick on their foes, doing whatever they command him to. All for a single promise made by them to free Kratos from his horrific past. And while at the time the game first released, the sins of Kratos' past and the reason for his deathly white appearance were meant to be a mystery, only to be revealed to the player near the end of the game, given that the franchise is already 20 years old and is decently popular in the larger pop culture sphere, I'm assuming it's already a well-known fact that Kratos' Blades of Chaos come from a deal he made with Ares, the original God of War, to save him from defeat at the hands of the barbarian king and his horde, in exchange for his life and soul, and that his skin is coated with the ashes of his wife and child whose lives he had taken by mistake. Very similar to another Heraclean myth, this time the story of how Hera had cursed Heracles with a blinding rage and bloodlust, which caused him to slaughter his own family, except with Ares in place of Hera. The story of Kratos in the first 6 games, 7 if you include Betrayal, is a masterful take on the classical ancient Greek tragedy infused with the tropes and plot beats from several existing myths. A proud and brave hero succumbing to his own hubris, ego, ambition, and carnal bloodthirsty desires. And the first game is both a microcosm and an inversion of that. Because Kratos' flashbacks do tell that classical tragedy of a prideful Spartan whose ambition and desire for conquest in the name of his homeland led him to one day underestimate a superior opponent, and in his final moments pledging eternal loyalty to a monstrous god who would go on to further fuel Kratos' worst possible traits, turning him into a vicious monster. A monster that the petty god wanted loyal only to him, seeing Kratos' family the only thing tying him down to his humanity as a problematic variable, and thus the culmination of Kratos' tragic fall, the ultimate price to pay for his ambition is being tricked by Ares into taking the lives of the only 2 people whom he cared for more than anything. While the game's present time story initially feels like an inversion of that, a pursuit of redemption through forgiveness from the gods, similar to how, yet again, the tale of Heracles, which a lot of Kratos' characterization in the first game specifically is inspired by, subverts the typical tragic Greek tale by allowing Heracles through his perseverance to earn favor from the Olympians and be made a god by Zeus, marrying and having children with the goddess Hebe, achieving peace and ultimately a happy ending. Except the game pulls a really damn well executed rug pull of nullifying this potential subversion, because while the Olympians do seek to let Kratos have his revenge on Ares and plan to have him be made a god, in contrast to the myth of Heracles, the rulers of Olympus care not for the peace Kratos so desperately seeks, and thus, having reinforced that tragic motif, God of War 1 serves as the first chapter in the larger tragedy of the original trilogy.
These are the blades of crunch time, and what I want you to do, Azrael, is take them and use them to persuade my developers to work so very, very hard under a really short time frame. Don't hesitate. You do want your favorite Bandicoot to continue existing as a franchise, don't you? So take them and do what I want you to do.
Alright, motherfuckers. Crunch time, baby. Release on Friday. No treatment. No more maternal leave. Fire the QA department. Fire HR.
Oh, stop! Please, we can't handle it while crunch time! Please stop! What has Universal promised you? Is it money?
It's a lot more than money. You can never understand. If I do this, Universal will ensure that my favorite Orange Bandicoot survives.
You mean Crash Bandicoot? We're the new devs!
What are you talking about?
Crash Bandicoot! We're the Crash Bandicoot developers! We are developing the new games!
No. You lie!
No, I'm not! Just look around! There's concept art for the Crash Bandicoot characters all over the office!
What have I done?
As you might have picked up on, something I can never get enough of in the God of War franchise and can ramble on for hours about is its alternate take on mythology, reimagining these legends and melding them together, sometimes even crossing over elements from completely separate cultures, which I find to be incredibly fascinating. But going back to the analysis of God of War 1 as a game, I really have to commend its pacing. The adventure never feels like it's rushing or dragging on. It flows incredibly naturally and smoothly from one objective to another. From Aegean Sea to Athens, where we see Ares and his armies wreaking havoc, to the Desert of Lost Souls, where we need to find Kronos, atop of whose back lies Pandora's Temple, the main portion of the game, to our demise and descent into Hades and subsequent return to Athens in order to face off against Ares for the final time. All of it once again progresses incredibly smoothly. And surprisingly enough, not a single time did any of the roadblocks or detours on Kratos' journey ever feel forced. And that is no easy feat to accomplish for any story, game, or otherwise. As I just stated previously, majority of the game's runtime takes place inside of Pandora's Temple, and it is a phenomenally designed series of dungeons that was actually one of my first ever introductions to a Metroidvania style of in-game exploration, even if it's obviously not as complex as proper Metroidvania games, but it doesn't need to. The way it contributes to the game's pacing and tone is executed perfectly in my opinion. Actually, thinking about it, it's a lot more closely related to a D&D dungeon in that regard, which is something I now, as a person who grew to really enjoy D&D in my more adult years, absolutely adore in retrospect. Pathos Verdes III, the temple's architect, serves two primary roles in the game. Firstly, as the avatar for David Jaffe as a game designer, the author of the temple's layout and its many intricately designed traps. Speaking of, while I have absolutely no problem with most of these traps and think they're, for the most part, very well designed, even the scaffolding walkways, and are spaced apart just right, making for a wonderful gameplay flow throughout the entirety of Kratos' adventure inside the temple, there still is one trap I vehemently loathe, and it's that one goddamn rising floor spike segment. It barely gives you enough time to execute a series of movements that need to be just perfect. And David, my guy, one dungeon master to another. That is a twat move, honestly. Oh, and one quick side tangent. I don't know what could have possibly happened behind the scenes, but your dislike of the direction taken in the Norse era of God of War games genuinely baffles me. Because you yourself made Kratos' family and regret of his reputation as the Ghost of Sparta the key humanizing features of the character in this very game. So your very juvenile stance genuinely confuses me. But we will circle back to this point in a later video, most likely at the end of the God of War 3 review. Meanwhile, the second and the most important role Pathos Virtus III's story serves in the game's narrative is mirroring the loyalty and admiration Kratos has harbored towards Olympus over the past decade, and foreshadowing his inevitable disenchantment with the deceitful gods and subsequent wrathful descent. Through the many murals and architect's notes, we are told the story of how a devout mortal and artisan thought himself blessed by divine attention, deeply honored by the task of constructing the temple, would go on to put his whole life into it, believing the gods would recognize all the effort and mastery he poured into this tribute to their glory. But as the time went on, the realization would slowly dawn upon the architect. The realization that all this effort, all the blood, sweat, and tears that this work is built upon means nothing to the gods. As the architect saw his two sons pass away one after the other, a part of him would come to understand that this entire task was not an honor, not a blessing assigned to the most talented and deserving of artists, no. The gods simply found a loyal fool whom they could use and who'd waste his life all to erect a monument to their own divine pride and ego. Pathos Virtus III could not fully accept this reality. The fact that he had sacrificed years of relentless work, his life, the lives of his children, all for the gods who never even cared. He would be driven to insanity. His traps would become more and more elaborate and grotesque. He'd even incorporate the skulls of his deceased sons as keys for some of the temple's doors. And his descent into madness would culminate in him stabbing his wife during an argument over that very use of their children's corpses. Then, in one final moment of clarity, seeing how it were his own zealotry and artistic pride that put his family on this path, how through his own choices he killed the ones he loved, the architect would take his own life, cursing out the gods of Olympus. And now, a decade of thankless servitude in, Kratos is the latest plaything at the behest of the gods. A tool to be used and discarded if need be.
Oi, mate! I got an absolute bloody ripper of a proposition for you. The kind of offer you can't fucking refuse, mate. And I absolutely understand that it's probably really weird for you to see this embodied head appear in your room and start talking to you, but you gotta hear me out, mate.
What do you want?
Alright, maybe it's a bit less weird than I thought. Alright, so anyway, my name's Polygon Man, and you see, I was originally supposed to be a whole-ass mascot for Sony PlayStation. However, things didn't quite work out for that, with all those bandicoot bogans and drank and drongos, but nonetheless, I am now an official talent recruiter for Sony. I even got me on fucking demo plan, and that's pretty awesome. Alright, so it was all, yeah, that's right. So the reason I'm here actually is because Sony were interested in using your services to deal a major blow to that sodding bastard Universal. And we'll pay you bloody handsomely, you ripper. All you gotta do is break into that fucking office one last time and help us out.
Help? You don't get it, do you? You have no idea what I've done for Universal. All those developers, all that crunch time. You cannot turn any of that back now.
Boy, who gives a shit about changing anything, mate? You'll get paid and that's all that matters. And we heard the reason you worked for Universal in the first place was wanting to preserve the fucking Crash Bandicoot franchise. And Universal are actively fucking it up. we can save it for you, and you can have your revenge on him.
Revenge? And how do you suppose I do that?
You can just fucking kill him.
I'm in.
No, that's the spirit.
I feel like I should reiterate just how mechanically fun and satisfying this game is to play. The combat engine is intuitive, combos chain into one another really well, even if it's not as technically deep and diverse as something like Devil May Cry, one of the things that God of War takes clear inspiration from. But it's still nonetheless a great engine, and is in my opinion one of the best games to introduce someone to this type of hack and slash gameplay. It's actually very similar to the Batman Arkham series free flow combat engine in that regard. Both are simple enough as to where you can power through and get by through mindlessly bashing the same two buttons, even if it will take the button masher in question a ton of tries at times, but it actively encourages and rewards further exploration and experimentation with a variety of supplementary fighting mechanics. This is the prime example of an approachably low skill floor with a moderately high ceiling, which means that it's much easier to pick up and play and get back into the flow state after a long period of time away from the game, in contrast to something more complicated like DMC. On top of that, Santa Monica added further flair to the battles in the form of quick-time event finishing moves that went on to become another much appreciated staple of the series and the genre as a whole. The iconic circle icon appears above the head of every single enemy type once they reach critical health, where outside of boss fights, you have a choice of either performing a designated finishing move or to simply continue using base combos and abilities to kill off the foe in question. And the sheer brutal over-the-top ferocity that goes into these executions is just top-notch. While we're on the topic of the game's combat, I must say it is honestly really impressive that right on their first go, the devs gave us a very memorable and strong lineup of bosses, even though the selection is quite small. As stated previously, the introductory Hydra encounter is just a fantastically frantic and intense level that works as the perfect microcosm for what the rest of the game is going to be like. Then, the Temple's Guardian, aka the giant armored Minotaur, ramps it up by offering a much greater threat to the player. Where the Hydra was more of a set piece than anything, this is a straight up fight. The Guardian is more aggressive, changes up its methods of attack, and is actively intent on killing the player. But similarly to the Hydra encounter, Kratos needs to use the environment to his advantage, something that will prove to be a unifying feature of all three of the game's big boss encounters. The Guardian is encased in armor that needs to be shot at by a giant ballista in order to be broken. However, to ensure that the Minotaur gets hit by it and doesn't attempt to dodge it, Kratos needs to deal enough damage to stun the thing. As the armor is destroyed bit by bit and we stun the creature one last time, we use the ballista to execute it by impaling it to the giant gate doors that it was tasked with guarding. A brutally beautiful finish to a great boss fight. And fittingly, the game's final boss, of course, is the fight against Ares. The game's final encounter is split into 3 stages. First off, the initial fight against Ares, where you have full access to your arsenal of moves, which is my personal favorite. And not just because the following 2 segments are a notoriously sharp spike in difficulty. This first phase of the encounter feels like an even match between 2 magic-wielding warriors. The way it plays out also kind of reminds me a bit of the 3D era Mortal Kombat games, which I really enjoy. This fight, unlike the next 2 phases, is always a fun challenge every time I replay this game. The grandiose scale of it with the city of Athens in the background of the sea arena we fight in. Kratos attaining godhood along with a titanic growth spurt in order to defeat Ares. It all comes together as a glorious finale to a great game. Except, as stated previously, it doesn't end there. What immediately follows is a magical hallucination conjured up by Ares in order to break Kratos mentally. This sequence has our hero attempt to save a vision of his family from the horde of corrupted manifestations of himself. A fitting, not at all subtle, but absolutely beautiful in its tragedy representation of Kratos' inner turmoil. His guilt at the murder of his wife and daughter manifested in this dreamlike sequence where he puts his all to protect his loved ones from his own inner darkness. Kratos overcomes his monstrous demons, proves to himself and the player that there is nothing he wouldn't sacrifice for his family given the chance. At least in this point of his life. And mechanically, this is shown both through the fact that we can actively choose to sacrifice Kratos' health to replenish that of his family, and the fact that this is an absolutely brutal increase in difficulty compared to the previous segment. I 100% understand why the speedrunners consider their run fully complete the moment you defeat Ares in the first portion of the finale, at least for most categories of speedrunning, I believe. Because this and the final segment are both an utter agony to go through. But as Kratos stands victorious, having protected his wife and child, having achieved his most sacred desire, the reality sets in. This was all just a wishful dream. Kratos cannot undo the horrors he himself wrought, and so ultimately the dream dies before him. As Ares strips the blades of chaos he once bestowed upon Kratos off of his forearms, with them he also takes away Kratos' access to magic, which means neither our weapons nor our magic abilities can be used against him in the final segment of the game. So, how do we fight Ares? Well, in a fitting fashion, Kratos yet again uses his environment in order to win the boss fight. This time it's by tearing off a giant sword-shaped bridge and using it as his weapon. One final boon from the gods of Olympus. One could even call it the Blade of Olympus, foreshadowing a key weapon from the game's sequel. And the Olympian sword has a completely unique moveset, which I'm not the biggest fan of, since it's a one-off mechanic thrust onto the player at the very end of the game, and while the idea of a shared health bar where you play tug of war by dealing more damage than your opponent in a rapid succession is absolutely phenomenal, well, in my opinion at least, I really wish the blade combos were a little bit more intuitive. Because more often than not, it just feels like throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. The startup time and speed for the special moves is a tad inconsistent and leaves you way too vulnerable, unless you only do them when Ares is exposed after finishing his attack pattern, so you can't really use any of the specials to interrupt or cancel his animations. And on top of that, on a successful hit, they do not really stagger Ares all that much, which is understandable, though it would have been a lot more cathartic to be allowed to juggle Ares as a reward for a successful combo string or counter or something in that vein. And unfortunately, the specials also do not give you invincibility frames. So if you execute a longer attack a bit too late and Ares exits out of his vulnerable state, he'll immediately have a prime opportunity to deal some good damage to you without receiving any himself, while you're stuck executing your attack move, which the game doesn't allow you to animation cancel as far as I'm aware. In the end, while it is a great concept on paper, in my opinion, the way it's executed makes for an incredibly frustrating final encounter. Though, much like any horribly frustrating challenge, overcoming it feels damn good. Especially seeing Kratos have his righteous revenge by killing Ares. Glorious. Though, before we proceed any further, I'd like to take a wee bit and discuss my personal theory regarding the game's production. Specifically, Ares being the main villain. Ares' visual design, while looking menacing and iconic, alongside a couple other things, have always bugged me ever since I was a kid. And the more I thought about it, the more certain I became that it was Hades who was originally supposed to be the antagonist before it got changed mid-development. Because why else is Ares' army mostly comprised of the undead and not living Spartan soldiers? Why does he go against the direct will of Zeus, despite Ares usually being amongst the most loyal of his kin in the myths, while someone like Hades has way more bad blood with Zeus. Hell, even his visual design in this game reminds me of Hades. The patterns on his armor depict Cerberus, the guard dog of the underworld and Hades' bestest boy. Disregard the fact that the God of War universe made Cerberus alongside many other mythical creatures into entire species instead of having them be unique named beasts. All for the sake of the player being able to have many a ferocious encounter against them, which I really like. Anyway, back to Ares' design. While this may not be mythically accurate, the fiery hair does seem like it could have been inspired by Disney's take on Hades from the Heracles animated film. And if my assumption is correct, then most likely Santa Monica would have realized mid-development that using Hades as the main bad guy would be incredibly cliché, due to how pop culture has misinterpreted him as the Greek mythology's version of the devil, while in reality he's just a mostly fair, chill, debatably really depressed ruler of the underworld. Either that, or Ares was always meant to be the primary antagonist, but he was given traits associated with the popular depictions of Hades in order to make him feel more villainous. But either way, this did bring us a very memorable and instantly recognizable version of Ares that succeeds at making the player want to beat the shit out of him.
It's over, Universal. Your reign of terror ends now. Never again will you mismanage any of your IPs, nor torment your innocent developers.
You literally just killed 2 of them!
Well, I suppose I did, but that is besides the point.
No, it's not. You didn't seem to mind any of that misery as long as you were the one enacting it.
I did so because of a promise you gave me.
And what difference does it make, really? But seriously, tell me, why are you doing any of this? And I don't just mean hunting me down, I mean any of this. These videos. You could be doing so many other things.
I suppose you're right.
What's the point?
I don't know, making these videos is fun, I guess. I started doing them mostly to entertain myself. To say things that would come to my mind, to practice voiceover, video making, etc. But I'd be lying. I'd be lying if I said that I didn't want to be heard, didn't want to be seen, because I do. And while I make all of these things, I make these videos, I write them, I can never stop thinking of new ideas for them, no matter how much life throws at me, how much work, schoolwork, or how much my own health fucks me over so many times. I can never stop thinking about this, about how much fun all of this is. And I don't think I have much time in me left. Not anymore, I don't think. This fucker's about to give out at any point in time, like even as I'm making this, there's still a chance, so I just want, by the time my run is up, I want these videos, no matter how insignificant, no matter how few views they get, I hope there are some people out there, or even one person, who would have felt the same entertainment factor, the same sense of fun, and would have laughed at these dumb, crass jokes I'm coming up with as much as I did while making all of this. If even one person, just one, can say that the persona in these videos spoke to them on any level, it'll all be worth it.
Didn't you just disregard your audience by claiming that those who waste their precious time watching your videos are, what did you say, insignificant? That's it.
No, that's not what I meant. I meant more of a cynical, kind of objective point of view where no matter what I do, no matter what most of us do, artistically speaking, it's technically insignificant in the larger cosmic scheme of things, or whatever. No. Every single one of those people, every single one of those views is significant to me. Because that means that every single one of those is potentially a person who found any of this funny, entertaining, or simply worth a watch. And that brings a smile to my face. It really does.
Well, isn't that just wholesome? Aren't we supposed to have some grandiose jewel?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Oh, it's good to see you fucking return, mate. Oh, I've been quite lonely here without ya.
You're still in my house.
Well, yes, I am. And what about your job, eh? What about Universal?
Yeah, I dealt with Universal.
Oh, very good, mate. Very good.
What about your part of the bargain? When is Sony gonna save the Crash franchise?
Oh, don't even worry about it, you cunner. So you see, franchise has got a lot of jumping from one studio to another right now, and we're thinking about selling it to Activision. That sounds pretty good. Oh no, ye get back here. We have a contract. You are not legally allowed to kill yourself.
Fuck you.
Having fulfilled his service to the gods by protecting Athens and Olympus, as the two would inevitably become a target of Ares' wrathful ambitions, Kratos expects the gods to give him the salvation he so desperately craves, to be rid of the persistent nightmare that are the memories of murdering his family. However, despite the myriad of ways the Olympians could grant him such reprieve in the myths, such as giving him the waters from the river Lethe that erase one's memories or putting him in a state of mindless bliss with the help of someone like Dionysus, Morpheus, or Hypnos, or just bringing Kratos' family back from the afterlife. Hell, Hades did it with Eurydice after Orpheus' tragic love song touched his heart. Granted, it didn't end too well in their case, but still. The gods decide to be cruel old bastards and fuck Kratos over via a technicality. Well, that is very mythically accurate, so... Since they only promised Kratos that his sins would be forgiven, they essentially weasel their way out of actually doing anything for Kratos. And so, abandoned, betrayed, and desperate to be rid of his pain, Kratos decides to take his own life. But even this escape is denied to him. The Olympians place a curse upon his soul so that he could never die at his own hands, which comes back later when he attempts to do so at the end of God of War 3. The gods are not yet done with Kratos. They attempt to keep him as a tool by offering him the throne that once belonged to Ares, thinking that being granted godhood would make Kratos grateful and yet again subservient. But the decade of divine deception and the ultimate realization of the gods' hypocrisy have opened our Ashen warriors' eyes to the truth about the selfish and manipulative nature of Zeus and his allies. And so a bitter, enraged Kratos takes his place upon the throne, vowing to show Olympus their greatest nightmare, to become a god of war more vicious and horrifically cruel than they could have ever imagined. And so with the game's story over, I must say I am quite impressed by how much there is to do after beating the initial campaign. Firstly, you unlock treasures, a series of extras including a character graveyard full of scrapped models of enemies and prototype designs for Kratos. Each model also comes with a lovely bit of trivia, Honestly, I absolutely adore stuff like this, and genuinely wish more games had small dedicated areas to scrapped assets akin to this game's character graveyard or the Insomniac Museum from the Ratchet & Clank series. Then we have the wonderful making of documentaries, as well as 2 narrated lore drop videos, one of them recounting Kratos' childhood in Sparta, as well as the story of his brother, who was ripped from him and abandoned in the mountains deemed too weak, as per the Spartan tradition. Kratos' brother would perish and mature in the underworld, bent on one day having revenge on Sparta and his brother, who had become one of the land's most revered warriors. The story of Kratos' brother, whom we will know as Deimos, would later be shown to us in The Ghost of Sparta, a spin-off game originally released for PSP. And while the broad strokes remain mostly similar, it is altered to have Deimos be taken away by Ares and Athena, and instead of dying in the mountains, Deimos would be locked away in the domain of Thanatos, the god of death. Meanwhile, the other story shows Kratos seeking out his mother, who on her deathbed attempts to reveal the name of Kratos' father to him, only to be transformed into a vile monster because of the curse placed upon her to stop her from uttering the name. As Kratos is forced to kill his own mother out of defense, in her dying breath she reveals to him that he was a bastard child of Zeus all along. Interestingly enough, this scene too would later be adapted and retold in the Ghost of Sparta game, however this time with much less retconning. There are also a couple other videos that only get unlocked once you replay the game on the newly acquired God difficulty, that offers a greater challenge level for combat encounters, a feature that I'd say is pretty much a given in the genre. And the last thing unlocked upon beating the game for the first time is the Challenge of the Gods, a series of combat trials that upon completion grant you access to the alternate costumes for Kratos for your next playthroughs. And awesomely enough, the skins aren't just cosmetic, they offer actual gameplay modifiers. Not to mention that these ridiculous attires are just stupidly funny, and that alone would have made it worth it to replay the game while wearing one of them just for the sake of shits and giggles, or feeling like a total badass in the case of Ares armor. Ultimately, while nothing groundbreaking, this is a very solid selection of post-game content that feels like it offers just enough to keep reeling the player back in for a pretty decent length of time. And with that said, due to a very strong core gameplay component, engaging storyline that beautifully pays homage to the tales of Greek myth and its other depictions throughout pop culture, as well as its replayability and extra content, the original God of War gets 8.5 out of 10. Santa Monica absolutely nailed the first ever installment in their legendary franchise, and in my opinion, this cannot be overstated. And I simply can't wait to talk more about this series in subsequent reviews. But until next time, my wonderful lads, lassies, and everyone in between, take care.